I'm the youngest of 4 children by 10 years. I was born in Los Angeles, California, and I lived in Las Vegas, Nevada for 10 years. When I was 13, I moved to a small town called Ruston, Louisiana. And from there, I completed my high school education and went on to pursue my college degree. My childhood was pretty much your average childhood. Always had something fun and exciting to do. My parents were very loving and supportive parents. I always had fun with my siblings. Even though they were much older than me, I pretty much kind of tagged along with them. Occasionally got on their nerves a little bit, but overall we had a really great childhood and upbringing and went to really great schools, learned a lot, and I compared to a lot of the kids that I see, I feel very grateful that I had the upbringing that I did have, because I see a lot of kids on a daily basis that deal with abuse and neglect and just a lot of family issues. I currently live in Shreveport, Louisiana with my husband, who is my college sweetheart, and our 2 children. We have a 6-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. And we love being with them. We have wonderful times as families throughout the holidays and just every day. Some of my hobbies include reading. I actually recently started a book club with both of my sister-in-laws. And I also enjoy doing pageantry, which has been a big part of my life. I started competing in pageantry when I was 19 years old in college. I competed for the title of Miss Louisiana Tech University. And unfortunately, I didn't win, but I went on to win another pageant and competed at the Miss Louisiana America System pageant. And that was one of the greatest experiences ever. I'll never forget that. And it really helped to develop me into the person that I am today and into the counselor that I am today also. When I was younger, I knew I wanted to be in some sort of career that helped other people. I wasn't quite sure exactly what that was until I got into college and I started studying deeper into psychology. And then I decided I really do think that counseling would be an excellent profession. I didn't really have a desire to go to medical school to become a doctor. So I said that is probably the perfect medium to go ahead and just get my master's degree so that I can eventually go into private practice for myself. And that's exactly what I decided to do. I really love counseling. It makes me feel so fulfilled to see the progression of my clients over a period of time. And it's just a very satisfying and rewarding career overall. And I always encourage people, if you love to help people and if you really have the skills of patience and if you're really self-motivated, that being a counselor would be a great profession. I really love helping people. I definitely have a heart geared towards service, which is something that's been ingrained in me since I was a young child. My parents have always been very helpful people, whether it was giving financially or just giving of their time. And I think I give a lot of my time to my clients, even outside of our sessions. I could see something on television or see something in an internet search and a client of mine will pop into my head and I'll say, wow, this is something that this person could really benefit from. So my mind is always working towards how I can help improve the lives of my clients and others. I would definitely describe myself as being more spiritual. I've always had a relationship with God and with Jesus Christ, and I was always taught that growing up. My parents really made it a point to ensure that their children didn't feel pressured to go in any particular direction as it came to religion and spirituality. They let us make that decision for ourselves as far as what we believed in and what we wanted to do as far as our spiritual connection. And so I really appreciate that aspect because we can see some extreme behaviors as it comes to spirituality. I definitely have a relationship with God and reading my Bible and praying regularly, even within my profession. I constantly pray over my practice and over my clients and just over myself, that I have a calm and peaceful spirit going into each session so that I can help the clients in the best way possible. Behavior disorders typically start in childhood, so you may see them as attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as well as oppositional defiant disorder. You may even see some other disorders such as obsessive compulsive disorder or an eating disorder. If those behaviors are not treated as a child or go neglected, they can continue on into adulthood. And that's where we may see adults suffering in tremendous ways in their adulthood, with their jobs and their relationships and everything in between. There could be a number of reasons why somebody is suffering from a behavior disorder. It could be a genetic problem. It could be a chemical imbalance in the brain. And a lot of times we may see a history of trauma with a lot of my clients that I see on a day-to-day basis. Many of them have trauma. And when I say trauma, it could vary from abuse to neglect to also being in a very bad car accident or a house fire of some sort, or even having a lot of physical health problems that cause them to undergo many surgeries or have severe health conditions. Well, I've worked in the domestic violence field for about 11 years now, and I've seen many extreme behaviors in relationships occur throughout the years. So a big one that most people may recall is stalking. And that's when you may see someone showing up at someone's job unannounced, calling their job several times, calling their cell phone multiple times. Also, maybe being outside of their house, just in places where they're not welcome and unannounced several times a day. Also, I may see very controlling behaviors, not wanting their significant other or partner to be around, even family or friends, not wanting them to go to work, not wanting them to pursue any further education or anything like that. And then also some of the really unfortunate and extreme behaviors result in maybe restraining or trying to keep that person at their residence or holding them hostage in some sort of way. In order to treat someone with a behavior disorder, I first assess their background, their history, their family life, their social life, and even their development from infancy on into their childhood and beyond. I definitely want to know where they come from and what has happened to them that has gotten them to this point of having an extreme behavior. Next, I would go forward with assessing what are some of their triggers that cause them to react in an extreme way. Once we identify those extreme triggers or behaviors, then we could go into identifying some ways that help to relieve the stress that causes them to act in that way. So we may discuss a variety of coping skills and relaxation skills to help them have a plethora of tools to use as they're working on dealing with controlling their extreme behaviors. Well, there's definitely a stigma about mental health, just in general. It's funny because it's a lot of times we separate the brain from the body when the brain is actually a part of our body. And I think if we would look at it in that way instead of separating the two, then we would feel more comfortable about going to a professional to help us with whatever illness that's affecting our brain and our emotions at that time. Because of that stigma and fear of judgment from our family or friends or coworkers, or fear of having a label put on you because you have to have a diagnosis of some sort to use your insurance, that really turns people off from seeking professional help. But that really is the best and only way to combat those extreme behaviors and extreme thoughts. Yes, so you may see a lot of these dangerous events on your 5 o'clock news or your 9 o'clock news at night. Many of these behaviors end violently and deadly. Like I said, when I was working with domestic abuse survivors, they often had some very extreme results with leaving their abuser. Many of them wound up injured, and unfortunately, some did not make it out. A lot of times, domestic violence or extreme controlling behaviors end deadly. Also, another risk is suicide, where someone ends their life. So, a person that is left untreated with a behavior disorder can eventually turn to suicide, homicide, addiction, as well as other extreme behaviors like hoarding or abusing others or abusing themselves, self-harm. I've seen many cases in the past several years of extreme behavior in relationships ending up deadly, where there's a suicide, homicide. There's just so many unfortunate events that can occur from someone not getting the help that they need, which is exactly why I make it my mission to help promote mental health treatment throughout my community and beyond.
You're isolating yourself in children, they can also have behavioral disorders as well. And these behaviors usually cause some type of disruption within the classroom and also at the home. And it can also be a result of things that are going on at home, such as witnessing violence, domestic violence. Also, if they are being bullied, and these behaviors, once again, usually last for longer than 6 months. And someone who is experiencing these type of disorders, whether they be a child or an adult, I would definitely suggest that they receive some type of mental health treatment, whether that be talking to a therapist. It also may be necessary for someone to seek out medications through a psychiatrist, because if behavioral disorders go untreated, then it will cause people to not be able to hold a job, and then also it can dramatically affect your relationships, and you will also tend to have riskier behaviors and fall into addiction, whether that be alcoholism, drug addiction, porn addiction, sex addiction. There's so many different ways that people with behavior disorders have risky behaviors, and also those who may have a conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder, which usually is actually more predominant within males, but females also can be categorized this way as well. But those are individuals who do not accept responsibility for themselves and for their actions, and also they are usually ones that do not like authority. They don't follow the rules, and so these behaviors can turn into very violent behaviors. These type of people usually are very threatening to themselves or to other people, and we don't want someone to go untreated in that way. And so, as I was saying, it's best practice to seek out individual therapy, and also you may need to consult with a psychiatrist. And one of the best ways, I believe, in my practice that I try to help people is through EMDR. And so EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and movement. And so basically that is helping you to reprocess your trauma in a more healthy way. So we use rapid eye movement, which a lot of us are familiar with when we go into that REM sleep and your eyes go back and forth. So it's taking your eyes back and forth and being able to discuss a specific trauma and go deeper into it. And it's actually, it's a great practice, and it's used more so as a modality than a technique, at least in the way that I use it. And this helps to not only reprocess your trauma in a healthy way, so it takes away that effect that it had on you before. So now you are no longer distributing these disruptive behaviors, and you're able to live a healthier lifestyle. I recommend someone to a psychiatrist when I am noticing that their behaviors are not improving through therapy. And this can be rather difficult, especially within teenagers, because they're not usually very happy to go to a therapist anyway, so they're not really talking to you about it. But if someone is really trying to do the best that they can through therapy and taking those practices home, but maybe they are still very suicidal, or they have very risky behaviors, they are violent, they're having those anxious thoughts even though they are trying all the techniques that are usually talked about in therapy, then that is when I usually recommend someone to a psychiatrist. Those who are usually more controlling and abusive, it usually all stems back from trauma. They usually have gone through something within their life that they are not dealing with in a healthy way. There are also some who believe that behavioral disorders can also be genetic, which in some ways I do believe that as well, because in a lot of ways we mimic what we see too. So if you're coming from a very abusive background, maybe you saw your mother being abused by your father or her boyfriend, and it was not talked way that was actually like, no, we need to change this behavior, then you may tend to go towards those aggressive behaviors. But in all actuality, I believe that those who are more aggressive just are not able to handle what they've gone through in a more productive way. And so, in some ways, it can be like a cry for help. It's a detrimental cry for help, and no one deserves to be abused in any way. I do not condone violence in any way, but unfortunately, it just seems as though people who are more violent and more aggressive, they have not processed their traumas in a healthy way. And so that's their way of getting out that anger and that aggression and that sadness that they are feeling. And they don't know any other way to express it but to unfortunately hit someone or use a gun or hurt themselves. I use faith as necessary. I always pray before every single one of my sessions and every single day that God uses me for His benefit and for His glory. And within sessions, if someone would like for me to be faith-based, let's say they're a Christian, they would like to discuss scriptures or how God can use them, I definitely use that. And I find that people who are more spiritual in any way usually get better results overall because they have something to rely on. They have that hope, they have a purpose. And so my sole purpose and the reason why I'm doing therapy is because I believe that is what God called me to do. Basically how ministers talk. I just know that this is what God put me on earth to do, and I always have to seek help from Him in order to be the best therapist that I can be.
My name is Natasha Nurse. I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a coach, I am a DEI professional, I am a speaker, I'm a blogger, I'm a podcaster, I do a lot of different things. And for me, when we start to think about in our life experiences regarding difficult relationships or challenging relationships, something that really sticks out to me, I would say, is I've seen that, at least in my life, probably prevalent both in my family as well as in relationships with friends or acquaintances. And when honing in on family difficult relationships or challenges within family members, I think the key issue there is folks not really taking the time to think about the impact of what they say or what they do to others. And then that leaves people feeling not loved or not appreciated or not respected. And everyone has the right to have their emotions be considered. And whether people do that or not just dictates how you then orient yourself and how you spend your time and who you invest in from an energy perspective as well as a time perspective. And for me, really kind of honing in on what I want, what I don't want. Definitely, as I've gotten older, did not want to associate myself with people that I felt were not necessarily fueling me, empowering me, making me feel wanted, loved, appreciated, etc. So distancing myself, creating healthy boundaries was really critical in dealing with challenging relationships that I've had in the past, or if I have to deal with it in the future, kind of honing in on what I need to do, what I want, and just executing. And not seeing negative family members, not interacting with them has been extremely freeing and really absolutely necessary for my mental health, as well as just curating the life that I want for myself and my family. So that's my story, and that's my advice on dealing with challenging relationships.